My name is Frank Fanning. I'm the general manager of the Jamestown Tarp Skunks. And I'm the person to blame for that name, Tarp Skunks. I'm going to read for you an excerpt from Part 9 of David Millet's book, Across the Seams. Jamestown takes another fling at pro baseball. Well, here we go again, wrote Frank Hyde prior to the 1977 season. Hyde could easily be forgiven for his pessimism. He had no way of knowing that the new field manager for the Jamestown Expos, Pat Daugherty, would soon join Greg Malevy and John Newman as the most engaging personalities ever to wear a Jamestown baseball uniform. Daugherty had been in the Expos organization since 1972 and had coached for Herniak in Jamestown in 1973. In the offseason, Daugherty was head baseball coach at Indian Hills Community College in Centerville, Iowa. During a 15-year career at Indian Hills, his teams won 447 of 596 games, including 5 state titles. Daugherty was also elected to the Iowa Coaches Hall of Fame. He would coach the Jamestown Expos from 1977 to 1981, during which time he drew fans to College Stadium with his contagious enthusiasm and his team's scrappy style of play. He was Greg Malevy and Jake Pittler rolled into one. Known for his umpire-directed tirades on the field, Daugherty compelled Jamestown baseball fans for the first time in decades. Daugherty also brought a winning attitude to College Stadium. The 1977 season allowed Daugherty a summer to get acquainted with Jamestown and its fans. The Expos finished in second place and attendance was adequate, but it was in 1978 that Daugherty's Expos took root in the community. Prior to the 1978 season, College Stadium was given a facelift. Jim Fanning, in fact, came from Montreal to help paint, while others scrubbed the dugouts and polished the lighting fixtures. Fanning also sent a strong group of ball players to College Stadium, including a 6'1" first baseman named Anthony Raymond Razor Shines. Led by Shines, who would play 4 years in the majors with Montreal, the 1978 Expos won their first 7 games.
First in 1973, I came as coach for Walt Herniak at 19. What had happened, Greg, I started in Jim Fanning, Mel Didier then was, who's now the farm director of the new Diamondback Club. I managed Sarasota, Florida, well, actually Cocoa Beach, Florida, 1972. And I managed them to the worst record they ever had. And I was going to mention that tonight. I think I had a 9-60 record. We lost 23 straight games in July. But then I used to tell the people back home, and that was my first year, and I thought, I thought I was the Leo DeRocher and Casey Stengel. I thought I was everybody. That this was going to be easy. I'm going to move right through professional baseball. And surprisingly enough, Gary Carter was my catcher on that club. And Ellis Valentine, who should have had a great career, and then got into the cocaine and stuff. But anyway, when I went back home with that record, I told the people back home, because they was following in Sporting News, I said, isn't it terrible that a paper as reputable as the Sporting News can get a guy's record turned around? But I blew that leg out of the water in 72, and was a young high school kid that came there to catch, and he had a history of doing the unusual. One night we had a rain delay, and we were all in the locker room, and finally a couple of players come in out of the dugout and said the game's been called. It's just been announced over the PA system. And almost immediately after that, the 2 umpires come into the room furious, wanting to know who called the game. And I said, well, I figured you did. You guys are in charge of it. And he said, no, somebody else called the game. And finally someone said that Mitch Cipolla was up in the PA box. Well, Mitch said he had always wanted to be a TV or a radio or TV announcer, and he was just trying his voice out on the PA and made the announcement that the night's game's canceled. So we lost a game because Mitch was trying to further his broadcasting career. So one night I was going to play him. He was all excited. They're playing the national anthem, and the pitcher and everybody runs out to the mound. And what had happened, John Connell was so nervous right when they started playing the national anthem, he ran in the locker room, and one of the fans come by and saw the padlock was unlocked and in the hasp, so he just locked the padlock. I'd been thrown out of several ball games early in that season, and Jim Fanning, the umpires, Vince McNamara, told me that he was going to call the league. They were going to call Jim Fanning and John McHale if I got thrown out of any more games. And we were sitting one night right before a game started, and an umpire, we had a real tall umpire, which I hadn't seen before, had to be 6'7". And jokingly, before we took the lineup out, one of the players sitting by me said, "You know, you're not going to be able to look him eye in the eye. Why don't I bring this milk carton, a milk carton that we kept, we used for BP." He said, "Why don't I bring the milk carton out and you can get up on the milk carton and you'll be even with him." I said, "That's a good idea. When I go out, you follow me out and set the milk carton down and I'll get up on it." And anyway, I thought it was a great joke, but the umpire didn't, and he threw me out before the game started. And I can remember pleading with him and said, I told him I didn't use any bad language. What are you throwing me out for? And he said, "You're making a travesty of the game."
Probably our biggest star was Galarraga when I was here. I had him. Very quiet and spoke very broken English. And I've got a great story about Galarraga. I got several of them, but he always, and to this day, when he's going bad, he jumps out. He'll jump. Anyway, I told him, I said, "I want you to stay back." He couldn't, I'm telling him, stay back, back. Don't lunge and don't jump out. So I started throwing balls to him. I'd throw just like slow pitch. I'd throw them clear up in the air. I mean, some bitches had a big, and he'd get watched him and get watched him and get watched him, and I'd say, "Stay back." Well, the other players got around and they'd laugh. I mean, they were laughing because I said, "Just keep your weight back and watch." And it's like slow pitch. Watch. Anyway, there's a knock on my door. And it's Galarraga. He can't say much. He comes, he's got tears in his eyes. He says, "Pot, no more." No more. So I had to explain. I said, "We're not making fun of you. This is trying to get you to..." But because everybody was laughing, he was saying, "No more of these. Just throw to me like the other players." And then I got on his ass one night we're in Geneva. Geneva. And he was pouting because I didn't start him. And he was also backup catcher. And he wouldn't go out and warm up somebody else has to go out and warm up so I got him a dugout, and I said, "From now on, you get your ass out there and warm up the pitcher. If not, you're on a boat tomorrow morning back home to Venezuela." Well, of course, he played for us now in Colorado for 5 or 6 years, but anytime I'd walk in the locker room, he'd say, "No boat back to Venezuela." Of course, he speaks English good now. And I said, No more, Cat." I can remember a game at Elmira when we were down 9-2 with 2 outs in the 9th inning, and we came back and won that game 10-9. And I can remember Dick Baradino, who was in that league longer than I was. Remember him chasing his players out of the dugout, carrying their clothes. They didn't even get a shower. Really a high-strung kid with a hot temper, and me having a hot temper, we went head-to-head for that whole year. He thought he should be playing at West Palm, and the Expos thought he should be playing at Jamestown. And at that time, he could really play. But after about 14 years in the big leagues, I've really never seen Tony. But a year ago, one of the players told me that Tony Phillips said hello. Tony Phillips said hello to the best manager you ever had. And here all these years I was avoiding him, thinking that he probably remembers me as a guy that was on him every day. I remember John McHale coming in our old locker room during a rain delay and watching the rain trickle down on his new suit. And I thought, well, at least he knows now what the players and the manager is going through in this old locker room, because it used to pour down those steps, and
there was some good lockers and bad lockers in that locker room. The good locker was one where you come in after a rain and your clothes were not all soaking wet.
We had a big linebacker from Eastern Michigan named George Shervish. He looked like a Omar Sharif. He was tough, and he was mean, and he was tough to handle.
Yeah.
But anyway, I had a phone that Pat Mullen, the old hitting instructor we had here, gave to me one time, and it's amazing. If you ring a phone, I don't care if it's in a bar or what, if you ring a phone, everybody will stop.
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, I hung this phone in the dugout. I told the guys I'm going to get Shervish because all the girls, he always had 15 girls ask about him, but it just had a little cord on it, and I just pounded a nail in the thing and dug out and hung just a little plastic receiver, hung it up there. But I told one of the pitchers, I said, when Shervish comes in from right field, ring that. So he comes down and gets a drink, and I'm standing on top of the dugout. So the kid with the little buzzer he had in his pocket, and he rang it and rang it. And pretty soon everybody's looking. So I said, Bill, get the phone. And I said, I don't know who in the hell, I just had this thing put in, who in the hell give the number out? But I said, this is a private goddamn phone. So anyway, it rang and rang. So finally I went over and I picked it up. And I said, and then there's no cord. I got the cord just on the nail. And I said, Mike Shervish, yeah, he's here. Who is this? So Shervish stops. He's like, shit. So I said, Mike, take this time. You know, we're in the middle of a ball game, and whoever in the hell is calling you here, tell them that, you know, you want no more phone calls. This is a Skip's phone in this dugout. So he gets clear back in the corner. He pulls that thing out and gets clear back in the corner. And I thought, he's liable to hit me or throw me clear out of this dugout. But anyway, he started talking and that, and finally he looked at the plastic receiver and threw it down.
Good.
Mike Shervish.
And when I dine, I always dine with Billy, 'cause he takes me where I get my fill.
These are the secrets of champions. Okay, Joe DiPastino, what are the most important things for your catchers to know pre-game?
One of the most important things is when we get to the field that day, you always want to get there. You know, if you want to do your hitting, get there early. But once you get to the field, what you want to do is go into the manager's office and get the stat sheet. That's one of the most important things, because when our day begins, when we get to that field, we're there for the pitchers. Yes, the catchers will also want to hit, but the number one goal is there for the catchers to know that we're there for those pitchers that day. So when they get there, get the stat sheet. Sit down, look at it. I mean, it'll take you 2 minutes. You can sit down and just go over the guys who steal bases. That's big. Guys who have a lot of strikeouts. Guys that have, you know, a lot of strikeouts but with a low batting average. You know, guys that'll swing a lot when they're behind in the count. So the catcher can circle all that stuff down and have that stuff down. So when a pitcher gets in for the game that day, because they'll show up around 5:30, and when they get there about 5:30, then, you know, let them get there, relax a little bit, and then old catchers should always sit down with that pitcher and go over the scouting report for that day on. So the pitcher and the catcher is always on the same page. So when that pitcher goes out to stretch, he already knows that the first two guys in the lineup steal bases. And then the 3, 4, 5-hole hitters, the guys who have, you know, a lot of RBIs, but they have a lot of strikeouts, a lot of home runs. So those are the guys you don't want to beat you in certain situations with a base open. So that's one of the most important things.